Jaxon-Smith Njigba is an interesting wide receiver to look at after one season, his rookie year of 2023. I am going to begin this video with a little bit of a digression. I'm always struck by analysis of young players, rookies, particularly offensive guys for some reason. People are really quick to proclaim them as one thing, put them in a little box, and keep them there. I find analysis of JSN during the season, I should say, from last year, to be inflammatory at best and dishonest at worst. And a lot of times, a young man, he won't turn 23 years old until February of next year, after his second year is done in the NFL. He never redshirted at Ohio State before he was taken at pick 20, I think, by the Seahawks in the 2023 NFL draft. He did start slow as a rookie. There's no doubt about that. In terms of yards per catch and overall impact, through 4 games, JSN had produced 12 catches for 62 yards and no touchdowns through 4 games. That's about the time that I recall seeing things written and said about him on social media, almost running down the Seahawks for that draft selection, like I said, that were generally inflammatory or intellectually dishonest or disrespectful of someone who at the time, I believe, was 21 years old. Now, I had awareness of his, quote, slow start and how he improved because the Seahawks played the Ravens in Week 9, and I do Ravens content creation. So I gathered film of Seattle leading up to that matchup. Well, all he did during that stretch from Week 6 after the bye to Week 16, I think a span of 11 games, JSN put up 47 catches for 540 yards. So you can really take his rookie season and kind of separate it into the first 4 games and then this really drastically improved set of the next 11 games. Super quiet the last 2 games of the regular season. I don't pretend to know why, to be honest with you. He had 3 touchdown catches during that 11-game stretch, 2 game-winning touchdowns, I believe, one against the Browns and one against the Eagles in Week 15. He did only average 10 yards per catch in 2023. But I don't think in that offense he's generally been used as a deep threat on a lot of route combinations. I did review a significant amount of film here before trying to make any analysis, meaning I wanted to see a pattern of his routes, either catches or situations where he wasn't getting open, let's say, or when he did get open and just wasn't targeted for whatever reason, and I'll include a couple of those. Look, DK Metcalf gets a significant number of targets, rightfully so. He's a huge target. He did average almost 17 yards per catch in 2023, talking about DK Metcalf, in what most people would consider to be a down year for him in terms of total catches compared to 119 targets. JSN got 93 targets and had 63 catches. I think he can be similarly efficient, if not more so. I actually think, based on the L22 angle and end zone, he could have been credited with 2 more catches, 65 overall, and another late touchdown. I'm talking about the one against Dallas. It was overruled in the second quarter, I should say, of Seattle's 41-35 loss down there against the Cowboys in Week 13. I did think he maintained control of the ball, even though it clearly hit the ground. I'll show it to you. Nonetheless, I think the system they're in Seattle is going to give enough targets to DK, JSN, and Tyler Lockett. They had about 340 total between the 3 of them last year. You've also got 2 impressive young running backs to utilize, Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet. There's only so many plays to be run. So how many more targets do you think JSN gets in 2024? He's certainly going to get more than 93. Is it going to be 130? I wouldn't think so, barring injury to some other receiver. There are only so many plays to be run. One caveat to that. If Mike McDonald's defensive system has the impact in Seattle that it did in Baltimore, the offense will be on the field more because the defense will be getting stops. And that's entirely possible with the talent they have on the defensive side, the talent they have on the offensive side, running backs, receivers, and tight ends. The main point I have after going through 7 games, is that I think his stats and production can really only be curtailed by 2 things: opportunities or injury. I think he can step into a larger role in terms of targets and maintain that 68 to 72% catch percentage efficiency, which is quite high compared to other rookie wide receivers. The only guys that are in that range of efficiency for rookie wide receivers, that is, Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, they were in the upper 70s in terms of catch percentage, while putting up 77 and 79 targets. And then Josh Downs and Jaden Reed were also in that 66% efficiency range. Now, JSN was a first-round pick, So perhaps more should be expected of him. I got no problem with that point being made by someone, but when you watch the film from 2023, particularly from week 6 onward, the opportunity is there for him, and the talent and the speed, ball skills off the charts to exceed his production from 2023 and then some. I'm going to start with big plays he made. The 7 games I referenced is what I'll use as a platform. We're talking about week 7 against Arizona, and then 8, 9, 10 against the Browns, Ravens, and Washington. And finally, week 13 against the Cowboys and week 16 against the Titans. What we'll do here first is we'll take a look at some of the big plays that you have seen flow through on downfield passes or intermediate concepts, and then try to extrapolate whether or not he's capable of having impact across multiple locations on the field, the width and depth of the field, or is he just a slot wide receiver who can operate underneath on outbreaking routes against certain coverages. You've seen this one multiple times already during the course of this video. Just flow through, and if you're a Seahawks fan, obviously you watched it live. Week 12, one of the best catches of the season. Man coverage on a 3rd and 9. For a guy who didn't come into the league with a reputation of being a big play receiver, he's a slot guy, slower a foot than some of the other players drafted around him, even though his agility and short area quickness stuff is off the charts. He sure did make a number of big plays, and he sure did make a number of big plays in big moments. Again, this is a 3rd and 9 against the 49ers. Obviously, they lost this game. Geno Smith trusts him, and then the adjustment to be able to turn around after he was open towards the sideline, to be able to turn back towards the numbers, the middle of the field for us, and adjust to this ball, I think says a lot about JSN, the potential that he has as a big play guy. Do I think he's a big play receiver like a DK Metcalf? Well, no. Their body size is different. Their explosiveness, their fast twitch skills over the long haul might be different. But there's enough film of him from his rookie year, at least to me, to indicate that he's a guy who can make big plays from all different types of locations on the field. Game-winning touchdown catch here. Week 15 against the Eagles. I believe it's less than a minute left in the game, but I could be wrong. And Drew Lock is on the field. And so you're a backup quarterback, and you're going to throw the ball to people that you trust. Well, the Seahawks are blessed to have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and JSN, 3 guys that you should trust as a quarterback. He's the backside X here, and that's something I want to reference in this video multiple times. You'll see him lined up all over the place, in the slot, as an X receiver. Is he an X receiver who's going to dominate one-on-one matchups like an OBJ did in his prime, like other players, Devontae Adams? I don't know about that. I just know wherever you put him, he appears to be able to be effective. And on a 3rd and 10 here, by the way, against James Bradbury, he's just able to run by him. And you'll see that at least 3 times in this video where he just runs by different corners at different locations on the field. Outside corners, nickel, slot defenders, safeties. I think he's got the athletic ability to make more plays like this. If you're a Seahawks fan and you have a more in-depth discussion point about it, feel free to let me know in the comment section. If you disagree with me, no problem. I do not look at him in the same way at all as what was said pre-draft before his rookie year, that he was a slot position player only. It looks to me like he can line up damn near anywhere. Kind of a gimme touchdown. There's a blown coverage here by Arizona. Week 7. Of course, I had this game. He's the outside receiver. I had this game because the Ravens are playing him in week 9. The Ravens are also playing Arizona, so I wanted to get film of this one. Very similar to a decades-old play out of the backfield where you'd have split backs, and the first guy through gets a play fake, and the second guy through always gets the ball. This is conceptually similar, except it's a pass play down the field. You got a post by JSN, and then Lockett is kind of running this bendy little corner route, but he's first, meaning he overlaps and JSN underlaps. The corner and the safety, I think Budda Baker both go with Lockett, and it's wide open for a touchdown. So it's a gimme touchdown, don't get me wrong, but you have enough film of this throughout the course of the season, I think, to be able to justifiably say JSN's a guy who can score 6, 8, 10 touchdowns in any given season. It's just a matter of being healthy, being on the field, and then the opportunities that he gets with Lockett, DK Metcalf, and all the running backs that are going to command carries as well, spreading the touches around. a series of routes here to illustrate JSN's ability as the X receiver or outside wide receiver. Sometimes technically he's the Z if he's on the same side as the tight end, but I don't pretend to know the offensive system, the structure of what they called it, but historically the Z is on the same side as the tight end. Either case, outside wide receiver, closest to the sideline. All of these are going to be third downs except this one. 1st and 10, week 16, you're going to get an invert cover 2 by the Titans. So there's clearly off coverage by the corner. In fact, the corner's rolling back to be a safety. One of the inherent weaknesses, I think, of an invert cover 2 is that you're playing cover 2, so you are getting defenders out into the flats, but no one is touching the number 1 receiver, gets a free release. I think he's really smart. I think he sees the safety push out to the flats and then reads what is the corner now playing half field safety, the invert cover 2 nature of it. I'll try to display here. You got your flat player, deep halves, essentially a safety, deep halves, and then your middle of the field Mike, who would run between the hashes with any vertical. In any case, it was a free release by JSN. Easy read for Geno Smith, 20 yards. Super smart player, very smooth. Nothing looks pressed for him, even the tough catches. This is going to be up at the top of the field, that week 15 game where he had the game-winning touchdown. This is 3rd and 10. By the way, in the 7 games that I went and grabbed film of, I guess actually 8, I grabbed 4 plays from the 49ers game where he had the brilliant catch, the first play that I showed you, or the first one I broke down. I grabbed every 3rd down. I grabbed every single 3rd down that wasn't a 3rd and 1 run play or a 3rd and 2 quarterback sneak. So I went and grabbed every 3rd down because I wanted to see what he does on 3rd downs. Well, in this 3rd down in particular, you have off coverage. That's systemic to a lot of teams in the NFL and college football nowadays that want to hide their coverage. And in this case, he on a little in cut. Drew Lock again is back there at quarterback. And he's sticking this ball in there before the safety can converge, before the safety can get there. And JSN's got great hands, number 1. That's obvious. But he's also got great hands through contact. I will show you 2 drops later that are disappointing for me, but that's the only 2 that I could find across 7 games. Week 16 against the Titans. Again, this is a 3rd and 14. You're talking man coverage. So it's not off coverage. He's not getting a free release like the first 2 plays that I showed you. He's got someone to actually deal with. In this case, he wins. He gets to his spot, if you ask me. Is he a 4-4 guy? No. Is he a 4-5 guy at this point? I don't know, and I really don't care. Once you get the pads on, can you get to your spot or not? Do you have to make so many contested catches because you're unable to get away from the super athletic outside corners that you'll face as an outside receiver? I think he can do that. If you're a Seahawks fan and you disagree or agree, feel free to let me know in the comment section or as this thing premieres. But to me, he looks like a guy who can get to his spot. To use an NBA comparison, which is what I often use, he does look like a guy who can win one-on-ones. But it's not always just going to be blowing by the defender with a quick first step. He's got multiple moves and ways to get there. I think JSN was a brilliant pick at pick 20. I understand if others will have a disagreement because of certain players that were drafted after him. The slow start got a lot of attention. I think the great mid-season week 6 to week 16, like I talked about, should get just as much. A couple of more as an outside receiver. On 3rd downs, all of them. And you can see this one's against a press coverage situation. Press coverage has changed in the last 6, 8, 10 years, obviously, with the rules and some of the concepts that teams use to free up outside wide receivers. But his little shake slant for 10 yards against man coverage on the outside, exactly one of the things that people might have been concerned about in terms of him being able to, quote, separate from super athletic outside corners in the NFL. In the 7 games that I have, he's able to do that. In fact, the situations where he's able to get less separation or not get open is oftentimes where there's leveraged defenders playing zone who then match up with his route. Now, this one is one that is clearly schemed up for him. 3rd and 5, week 13. He played a great game against the Cowboys. It's a shielded release. So the tight end is trying to get to the outside shoulder of, I think it's Deron Bland, and then JSN's running a China out or whip route, whatever you want to call it in the system that you're familiar with. So the tight end is trying to get to the outside shoulder here to force Bland to go over the top. And so therefore, JSN can then bring this route back to the sideline. That's why I call it a shielded release. pick, rub concept, whatever you want to call it. You can see Bland beginning to go over the top, and JSN then bringing this route back towards the sideline. Easy read for him and Geno Smith. Cool, it's a gimme. However, he also has the ability to catch it, put his foot in the ground, and then make DaRon Bland miss, pick up 11 yards. Let's look at some snaps from in the slot. Generally going to be fade routes. You will get a fade out here, and I'll try to explain that in a moment. Most of these are against man coverage, and the reason I'm showing the fade is because JSN can win on that route, and we have film of him doing so. In not every situation is he going to be targeted, and in fact, in 3 of these, it's either going to be ruled incomplete or the throw is actually incomplete. This is against Arthur Millette. Had a solid season for the Ravens in 2003. Everyone, rightfully so, knows how great Kyle Hamilton played as a second-year player. One of the best players in the league, obviously. So he's matching up on the tight end. JSN is drawing the matchup of the Ravens' quote second nickel defender, Arthur Millette. And he beats him to the outside. Now, it's a spectacular throw by Geno Smith, don't get me wrong. With the defender's back turn, he puts it in a place that's catchable for JSN and isn't over here. That's a really low percentage catch point. Probably should, draw on that closer to the sideline, but isn't putting it to the sideline such that it reduces the chances of it being completed by 20 or 25%. You'll see multiple routes here where JSN is winning on these concepts. 30-yard touchdown as the point man, again, against Bland. Now, it does get called back. The ball does hit the ground. I understand that. To me, I felt like he controlled the football all the way through the catch. I didn't see the ball move at all, but at this point, who the hell knows what a catch is? Point is, it was a defensive pass interference on Bland. He's able to win and get, obvious separation. The ball was already in the air. Geno Smith knows that he can get separation. The Seahawks coaching staff know as well. So these things are going to be available to him even more, or opportunities will be presented to him, I should say, even more in 2024. Same play, end zone angle. Like I said, it ended up being called a pass interference. If you're watching this long, you're a Seahawks fan, so you know. And then I think they scored on the next play or 2 plays thereafter. Initially ruled a touchdown, overruled. Still think it's a brilliant play for a guy as a rookie going up against DaRon Bland, who I think had like 9 interceptions, something like that. So some more routes of him on the same concept, fade or fade out. I'll show you the fade out here in a moment. Basically ends up being smash here with Lockett into the flats, running a China in. I think this ball's a little bit late from a Geno Smith perspective. I think it could be thrown a little bit sooner. If you're throwing the football, not releasing it exactly right now, but very soon thereafter, and you're getting the ball out here, there's going to be far more space for JSN to run onto. A little bit of a longer release, and the arc of this ball maybe is just slightly too high. JSN does catch it, but clearly doesn't get both feet in bounds. Got hurt briefly there as well. Against the Ravens, here's the fade out again against Millette. He's not targeted on this one, by the way, but it gives you an idea of what you can do if you're expecting the fade as the DB and then turn it into an out. So bring it to the sideline. Most fade outs would be a little bit shorter in nature or depth than that one. But the idea is that you're making the DB think that you're running a fade. And then as he begins to press and try to get into 5th gear to keep up with you, you turn that thing into an out, fade out. Extremely difficult route to defend, particularly down in the red zone. Obviously, he's not targeted there, but he's a guy who gets open on this route often, if you ask me. There's a lower angle for us. This is a little bit different. So perhaps he's not as open as I think he is. The ball is thrown just maybe a foot and a half too long, maybe 2 feet too long for JSN to be able to catch it. But you see the idea is that the standard to be open on these routes in the NFL is very high. To me, JSN appears to be there as a guy who can win these routes from a slot position. You don't need JSN to be the guy to win the outside jump balls or fade routes from closest to the sideline. He can operate in the red zone, I think, extremely effectively out of the slot position. Clearly got a lot of usage or opportunities on bubbles or hitch screens. I also like him being lined up on the same side of the field as Metcalf. So JSN in the slot, Metcalf as the outside receiver. I don't think that DK's blocking is as physically dominant as maybe it could be. I'm not saying he's not a willing blocker, but there just doesn't seem to be these overwhelming wins as a blocker. But nonetheless, look, this is a 4th quarter game-winning touchdown, Week 8 against the Browns at home. You're talking about a guy who has 2 game-winning touchdowns as a rookie and a third touchdown that was late second quarter against the Cowboys. Got called back against a Deron Bland, a guy who had an amazing year as a combination or hybrid corner, playing outside and nickel position. Jason's shifty. And like I said earlier, he's able to get to whatever spot he needs to on the field. If you give him this much space, the Browns are blitzing the nickel off the edge, basically creating a 2-on-2. If you give him this much space, he's going to win. As a Seahawks fan, feel free to let me know if there's more examples of plays like this where he's given this much space and opportunity and isn't able to make someone miss. In the 7 games that I grabbed, again, I omitted games weeks 1 through 4 and the last 2 weeks of the season, focused on starting in week 6 and then on to week 16. And I see a guy who can make people miss enough, especially on design plays like these, to be able to get yards and keep these in the playbook and provide high usage for him. A bunch set. He's on the same side as Lockett and Metcalf. They love that running back motion that shifts out and then comes back across the quarterback's face. Quick little screen to the bunch, 10 yards to JSN. I did see 2 times where it looked like he tried to bounce it outside instead of just following the seam. So what I mean by the seam is a situation like this, he kind of bounced it outside twice and was held to like a 3 or 4 or 5 yard gain. In most situations, he's a guy that trusts the tunnel, if you will, if it's a tunnel screen or wherever the seam is designed to go. The smoothness with which he catches the football, I think, is one of the reasons why you'll see continued usage on these plays for him, because he's able to catch the ball and get going sooner than other guys are who the catch and then planting the feet in the ground to go isn't as smooth. Now, there was 2 drops in the 7 games that I gathered, so I wanted to show both of those. 12 personnel bubble to the field. Obviously, the ball should be caught, but again, you got DK and JSN lined up to the same side. I know the offense will be different this year. New staff. Mike McDonald is going to bring some things with him from the defensive side, probably have some type of impact on the offensive side as well. You definitely have 2 running backs there that are talented enough to carry the load, if you ask me. This one was really disappointing from a Seahawks perspective. As a Ravens fan, of course, I was glad to see this drop on a 3rd and 4, speed out. A first possession of the game for Seattle, by the way. Again, you've got all 3 guys, Lockett, Metcalf, and JSN to the outside. And he's able to win to the outside sideline and drop the football, unfortunately for you guys. Look, I enjoyed doing the film study for JSN. I like looking at rookie film after most people have made their evaluations. Number 1, I'm a contrarian by nature. And number 2, I don't like to make snap judgments on anyone, whether it's a Ravens player, Lions player, or what else. I do recall looking at JSN film going into the draft and thinking to myself that year, the Ravens are not going to get him. I do recall thinking that. But so after 3 or 4 games of watching him at Ohio State, thinking this is not a guy that we're going to get, even though I really liked his game, particularly when he was healthy. Now that he's gone through a season in the NFL, to me looks like a balanced wide receiver who can line up anywhere. I didn't see many examples of him blocking downfield on run plays. I'm not saying he can't block, but those are things that I went and grabbed probably 10 or 12 longer runs by either Walker or Charbonnet, and I didn't see where JSN was actively participating as a blocker on those particular runs. If you have more information or ability to analyze it than I do, then go right ahead and let me know in the comment section what you think of him as a blocker. To me, looks game ready no matter where you put him, in the slot, as an outside receiver, in motion. I love the change of direction stuff against off coverage, what would be generally, I think, quarters or split field coverages. I think JSN is extremely intelligent and able to find space and not give away the route until the last second. And I think sometimes he forces corners and safeties into that conflict a little bit longer, so the complementary route that's working with him can sometimes get open. I'm not sure if I didn't touch on that at all in this video, but it's something that I think he has an impact on how long it takes corners and safeties to read the route that he's running and then decide who to defend in some of those quarters and split field coverages. I don't pretend to have watched a lot of the OTA stuff or read much Seahawks stuff, so you guys can feel free to update me in the comment section. What I did see and what I did hear or read was that he looked extremely impressive for 2 days at OTAs, which doesn't surprise me at all. I'm not a real big numbers or statistics guy. With Lockett and Metcalf there, can he be a 90, 95 catch, 10, 12 touchdown guy. No, the targets are just not going to be there. You're not going to get a receiver, any receiver for that matter, be at an 85% catch percentage. And I just don't think he's going to get enough targets to get to that number. Somewhere in the 75 to 82, 83 catches, 6, 8, 10 touchdowns, depending on situation. I do think the Seahawks will be an improved team in 2024 because of Mike Macdonald and a lot of the people that he's brought in. So there will be second halves where the Seahawks are, quote, in the lead and not throwing the football as much. That could have an impact on that overall number of 340, 350 targets between JSN, Lockett, and Metcalf. You guys are welcome to let me know in the comment section, good, bad, or indifferent, what you thought of the plays that I picked to illustrate his skills. And if the things that I'm saying line up with what you saw as a Seahawks fan, who I'm sure watched every game of the season where I did not. As an aside, if you've listened this long, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I will be able to actually do, I think, 4 or 5 Seahawks reaction video games during the season. I do every single Ravens game, probably 10 or 12 Lions games when available. And it looks like because of the crazy nature of the NFL schedule, I'll be able to do 4 or 5 Seahawks games as well. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other Seahawks fans would enjoy this content, this film study look at JSN's rookie season, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.